Baby Emanuel was abused, victim of child abuse over time, and that eventually, because of that abuse, he succumbed to those injuries.
There's a tremendous amount of evidence to suggest that the initial story posed was not the correct story.
After weeks of silence, after speculation, fear, and whispers that traveled through every corner of the community, Rebecca has finally spoken. Behind the cold walls of the jailhouse, under the scrutiny of investigators and the watchful eyes of the world, she said 4 words that could change everything. I am ready to talk. But what does she mean? What truths is she finally willing to reveal? And what secrets might she still be holding back? The moment Rebecca's words were recorded, the machinery of law enforcement shifted. A confession is never taken at face value. It becomes the spark for verification, the framework against which every fact must be tested. Tonight, we'll dive into her confession, piece by piece, exploring the timelines, the discrepancies, and the patterns that may explain what led to this moment. We'll hear the echoes of grief from the community, the weight of unanswered questions, and the chilling possibility that even now, the full story has yet to come to light. When someone finally speaks, the truth can no longer hide, but neither can the shadows of deceit, fear, and suspicion that have lingered for far too long. Join us as we unravel the confession, examine every implication, and confront the unsettling reality. In a case like this, the words spoken behind jailhouse doors may be only the beginning of a story the world is not yet ready to hear. But before we dive into this, kindly subscribe to our channel if you believe in fighting for justice, because every view, every comment, every subscriber is a stand against silence. Drop your thoughts. It's very important because it's a step toward justice. We've just crossed 5,000 subscribers, all because of your support, and we need that same energy to reach 6,000, then 7,000, and then 10,000. So go ahead and drop your fingerprints on that subscribe button, and definitely where you're watching from, because wherever you are, the day this vision is fulfilled, I will send my appreciation straight to you. Let's keep building this community that stands and fights for justice together. After weeks of silence, Rebecca has finally spoken. Her words could change everything, or unravel even more questions. Behind the walls of the jailhouse, under the watchful eyes of investigators, she uttered 4 words that have set a community on edge. I am ready to talk. What she said made us think through. Jake is in trouble. We will stand on this word till the end. Flashing police lights cut through the night. The jailhouse exterior looms, cold and unyielding. Blurred interview footage flickers on screens, and official documents sit untouched on desks, waiting for analysis. Every image, every movement carries weight. This isn't just a confession, it's a turning point, and the consequences could ripple far beyond the walls of the jail. Conflicting memories, whispers of what might have happened, and the questions that have haunted family and friends all collide in this single moment. What will Rebecca reveal? What will she leave unspoken? And how will investigators respond to a story that could reshape everything they thought they knew? Stay with us as we break down every word, every detail, and every implication of Rebecca's confession. Because in cases like this, when someone finally speaks, silence is no longer an option. This is the place where Rebecca has spent her days since her arrest, a space that transforms routine into scrutiny and privacy into exposure. The jailhouse sits like a fortress at the edge of town, gray, unyielding, and silent, except for the distant echoes of doors slamming and guards' footsteps. Inside, fluorescent lights hum over cold metal tables and chairs, where interviews are meticulously recorded, and every word is captured for the official record. This is the place where Rebecca has spent her days since her arrest, a space that transforms routine into scrutiny and privacy into exposure. Her arrest, executed after days of investigation and surveillance, led to her formal incarceration, where procedural rules dictate every interaction. Interrogation rooms are prepped with recording equipment, legal counsel is present, and every witness statement is carefully logged. Every question, pause, and answer is documented, part of a system designed to ensure that nothing, not even a word spoken under pressure, can be overlooked. Outside the jail, the community watches and waits. Whispers spread quickly. We heard she finally agreed to talk. Maybe we'll finally get answers. Hope and apprehension mingle in quiet conversations at homes, workplaces, and local gathering spots. People wonder, will the confession confirm their suspicions, or will it only deepen the mystery? Tension builds not just inside the jailhouse, but across the town itself. Public perception is shaped by rumor and rumor alone, while investigators follow facts, evidence, and procedural rules. The difference between what people believe and what the law uncovers creates a charged atmosphere, where every new revelation could shift the balance of understanding, and every unanswered question fuels both fear and anticipation. The room was still. The cameras were rolling, the legal representatives seated, the detectives waiting for something, anything, that might break the silence of weeks gone by. Then finally Rebecca leaned forward. Her voice, quiet but deliberate, carried 4 words that would shift the weight of the entire case. I am ready to talk. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't rushed, it was measured, delivered with the kind of hesitation that suggests both fear and finality. A single statement, but one that marked a turning point. Because in the world of criminal investigations, a confession is never just words. It's a moment that can alter lives, redefine narratives, and reopen wounds. Her tone mattered as much as the words. Observers noted the pauses, the downcast eyes, the way her voice faltered when silence stretched too long between sentences. Was it remorse? Was it calculation? Or was it simply exhaustion? An unraveling of the weight she had carried in silence. Investigators wasted no time. Every syllable was logged, every hesitation time-stamped. Notes were scribbled by hand, while audio and video recordings captured her voice from every angle. Detectives knew what was at stake. A confession could lead to resolution, or it could open a labyrinth of new questions. Either way, they documented everything with precision, because the law leaves no room for assumption. And in that room, in that moment, Rebecca's statement was no longer just her own. It became a piece of evidence, a fragment of truth, or manipulation, that investigators would now hold up against the tangled web of facts, reports, and suspicions. One sentence, 4 words, and the trajectory of the investigation had shifted forever. News of Rebecca's words didn't stay confined to the walls of the interrogation room. They traveled through the sterile corridors of the jail, into police briefings, and eventually out into the streets, where family, neighbors, and a weary community were already holding their breath. For some, it was a moment of cautious hope. One neighbor put it plainly, "We've been waiting to hear the truth, whatever that may be." The sentiment echoed across conversations, church pews, and family dinner tables. People wanted answers, but answers, they knew, could cut deep. Within Rebecca's family, the reaction was layered with pain. Relief that she had finally broken her silence collided with suspicion that this confession might not tell the whole story. For those who had stood by her, the words were both a release and a burden. What if she revealed more than anyone was prepared to hear? And among eyewitnesses, those who had sworn they saw details, moments, fragments of truth, there was no comfort. A confession didn't erase the images burned into their minds. It didn't erase the confusion of timelines, the unanswered questions of where, when, and why. Instead, it sharpened the divide between memory and fact. Because a confession, no matter how dramatic, doesn't erase fear, grief, or suspicion. It doesn't silence the whispers of what people think they know. It only raises more questions about what really happened and what still hasn't been said. The institutions, the investigators, the courts, would now treat Rebecca's words as procedure, as evidence to be dissected and verified. But for the people who lived alongside her, who prayed and wept and waited, her words were something else entirely, personal, raw, and impossible to separate from the human stakes of the story. When Rebecca finally spoke, investigators didn't just listen. They measured her words against the backdrop of everything they already knew. Each sentence was carefully noted, compared to prior reports, dissected for truth and contradiction. Her statements touched on timelines, where she claimed to be, when certain events occurred, what she remembered in fragments. But the record already held dates, witness accounts, and documented evidence. And in more than one instance, Rebecca's recollections did not align. For example, she insisted she had never left the house on one particular night. Yet police logs placed her car in motion miles away. She recalled conversations with family members who, when asked, remembered events differently, or not at all. What she called accidents or lapses of memory, others labeled inconsistencies. And investigators know this. The smallest inconsistency can unravel an entire confession. But beyond the contradictions, patterns began to emerge. Rebecca's words echoed certain behaviors documented in earlier reports: abrupt disappearances, unexplained absences, evasive answers when pressed. These weren't isolated accidents. They painted a recurring picture, a cycle of silence, followed by partial truths, each revelation arriving only when the pressure grew too strong to bear. Every revelation is a piece of a larger puzzle. But some pieces still don't fit. Was she protecting herself, someone else, or was she shaping a narrative to soften the truth she wasn't ready to face? Patterns, after all, aren't coincidences. They are signals, breadcrumbs left behind in stories that don't line up. And when a confession fails to close the gaps, it does something else entirely. It widens them. The moment Rebecca's words were recorded, the machinery of law enforcement shifted. A confession is never taken at face value. It becomes the spark for verification, the framework against which every fact must be tested. Detectives revisited earlier reports, cross-checking her timeline against phone records, surveillance footage, and witness statements. Every hour she described, every location she mentioned, became a checkpoint in the investigation. Procedural safeguards were also put in place. Interrogations were documented on video, transcripts reviewed by legal counsel, and corroborating officers called in to witness each session. The goal was simple: to ensure that what was said could stand in a courtroom, not just in a holding cell. But confessions carry risks. False memories, coercion, or attempts at manipulation can taint the truth. And so investigators approached her words not as answers, but as leads, threads to be pulled, tested, and either confirmed or unraveled. Confessions are powerful, but without verification, they are just words. And in this case, words alone will never be enough. The task before authorities was clear: untangle fact from narrative, and separate truth from the shadow of Rebecca's voice. Outside the sterile walls of the jailhouse, Rebecca's words echoed into the streets of her hometown. A community that had waited in silence now found itself caught between relief, anger, and a renewed fear of what her confession might really mean. For some, it was a glimmer of hope that finally long-suppressed answers might be coming to light. For others, it was a betrayal, confirmation that the trust once placed in her and Jake had been shattered beyond repair. The emotional toll was visible. Playgrounds once alive with children's laughter stood quiet, a haunting reminder of innocence interrupted. Candlelit vigils filled sidewalks, each flame flickering against the uncertainty of truth. Letters began to pour into law enforcement and the local press, pleas for justice, demands for clarity, and words of sorrow written by hands that trembled with grief. The confession shook more than a case file. It shook trust, hope, and the fragile certainty of a community desperate for closure. And yet closure remained distant. The words spoken in that interrogation room were not just evidence, they were wounds, freshly opened for everyone who had been waiting, watching, and wondering what really happened. Because when the walls of silence finally break, the sound that follows is not always relief. Sometimes, it is the sound of a town realizing the truth may cut deeper than the lies ever did. Today the case stands at a crossroads. Rebecca's confession has been recorded, carefully preserved in transcripts and video, an artifact of a moment that could alter everything. But words alone are never enough. Investigators now face the painstaking task of testing her account against the facts, timelines, forensics, and the silent details hidden in past reports. Unanswered questions loom heavy over every courtroom, filing, and every late-night police report. What motivated her to speak now? Was she protecting someone, or finally freeing herself from silence? Was Jake involved more deeply than he admitted? And most crucially, do her words align with the evidence, or are they another layer in a story built on contradictions? Her words have opened a door, but what lies beyond it remains uncertain. Behind that door may be justice, or deception, or truth so unsettling, they fracture the community even further. For now, the people wait. Investigators chase every thread. And somewhere between silence and confession, the truth continues to slowly unfold. Rebecca has spoken. But speaking is not the same as telling the truth. Her words now echo in jailhouse corridors, in police files, and in the hearts of those still searching for certainty. Yet until evidence confirms or denies her story, we are left in the uneasy space between confession and fact. For the families, for the community, and for justice itself, answers must come. Silence cannot linger forever, and neither can doubt. What Rebecca has revealed may one day stand as a turning point, or as another chapter in a case defined by shadows. We'll continue to follow this story, examining every detail and uncovering every hidden layer. If you believe the truth deserves to be heard, if you believe voices like Rebecca's must be challenged and investigated, then stay with us. Subscribe, share, and join us in demanding answers, because silence protects no one, and truth protects everyone.